Trump saying that he is going to impose tariffs on Mexico, Canada and China, 25% on Mexico and Canada, an extra 10% on China. Looks like, though, the Mexican tariffs have now been paused. We just heard from the Mexican president a short while ago. That has now been confirmed by President Trump as well. Let's cross to our US correspondent, Mark Stone. It seems that an agreement has been reached with Mexico. We know that a conversation is happening also with Canada today. Might that be paused as well, do you think?
Jane, truly, it is hard to keep up with the news here in the US at the moment. But yeah, I mean, a real interesting development. Just 24 hours after he said he would impose these extraordinary tariffs on his two neighbours, Canada to the north, Mexico to the south. They have gone away for a month at least. Why? Well, on the face of it, because Mexico is complying with Donald Trump's demands. And I wonder if this is going to become a pattern. And from Trump's perspective, he will see this as a massive, massive win. We heard from the Mexican president just now. She has released a tweet as well in which she outlines precisely the outcome of the good conversation, as she put it, with President Trump. And she says that Mexico will reinforce the northern border with the United States with 10,000 National Guard elements immediately to prevent drug trafficking from Mexico, particularly fentanyl coming into the United States. She says also that the US has committed to work to prevent the trafficking of high-powered weapons into Mexico, so a bit of things going both ways. And she says our teams will begin to work today on two tracks, security and trade, and that the tariffs have been put on hold for a month, I guess a month, so that President Trump can be the judge as to whether or not what the Mexicans have said they will do, they actually follow through on. But it's worth, Jane, taking a step back and looking at what Donald Trump is trying to achieve with these tariffs that we've heard so much about. It's also worth stressing that for so long, countries have been kind of wondering whether he would follow through on these threats. Through the campaign, he talked about the tariffs that he would have put in place. Would he actually do it? Well, yes, turns out he will. But there are three specific groupings. There are targeted tariffs to address unfair practices, either by specific industries or countries, like China. There are general tariffs, low-level, low-percentage tariffs applied across the board, across all different sectors, in order to generate revenue for the United States. These tariffs are the ones that the UK is particularly worried about. And then there are tariffs used as negotiating tools to try and get countries to do what you want them to do. And it is that third grouping of tariffs as negotiating tools, which the Canadian and the Mexican tariffs announced at the weekend. That's what they fell into. Trump saying to Canada and to Mexico, if you don't do what I tell you, then I will impose massive tariffs. And specifically for those two countries, it is all about migration and it is all about drug trafficking. So Mexico now seems to be saying, fine, we will do as much as we can. We'll do more than we've been doing hitherto. Please don't tariff us. And Trump said, OK, fine, we'll give you a month. It's more of a problem, Jane, for Canada, because Canada is saying, look, very little fentanyl comes over our border into the United States. So what do you want us to do? We know that Justin Trudeau spoke to President Trump this morning. They're due to speak again later today. But on the face of it, Trump is saying to Canada, you need to deal with the fentanyl issue. Canada's saying, well, we don't see what the problem is. We're doing as much as we can and not much comes over the border anyway. So let's see how that goes. But it is a very interesting turn of events, and I think shows what Trump would say, that this blunt tool that he's using, tariffs, his favourite word in the dictionary, it works when you want to get countries to comply with your demands.
What kind of reaction has there been from the American public, though? Because potentially they could be the ones that end up paying for this if inflation goes up. There's one estimate today, Mark, that says households could be spending an extra equivalent of £1,000 a year if these tariffs were brought in. What would you gauge reaction to be?
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? I'll be honest. I'll say we're trying to keep up with so much different news going on, I haven't actually gone out and spoken to many Americans at the moment. But what I can tell you is that it is obviously the case that, for example, tariffs on China, if you go into a branch of Walmart, so much of the produce in there will come from China. If he puts a massive tariff on China, then all of that is going to cost a lot more and it's going to hurt American consumers. Avocados, that's one example of a product which is imported from Mexico into the United States. Most avocados come from Mexico into the US. They are going to cost a huge amount more as a consequence of the tariffs, which have now, as we learn, been delayed by a month. Cars, American cars, yes, they're made in America, but many of the parts are pre-made in Mexico and then brought over to America and put in the cars. The cars are put together in the United States. So those parts will cost more, would cost more if these tariffs come into place. Energy, America gets quite a bit of its energy from Canada. That would cost more. So yes, I mean, economists pretty much across the board will tell you that tariffs end up meaning that everyone pays a little bit more, some a lot more than others, but prices go up across the board. That is what most economists suggest. But we'll gauge more reaction from Americans and get it to you.
OK, Mark, thanks very much. Always best to be truthful. Thanks a lot.